We had a few guests, and I want to kind of do guests at the workshop, and a lot of noise comes from the workshop. You're not permitted to speak, although some members may call you out and ask for something if they think you've got some information to share. So otherwise, just listen and don't talk. First thing we're going to do tonight, we decided last time, was to do a recap of where we are. And Darren, go ahead. You all got a copy of the zoning regulations. So what I did is just went through and then read, because I'm gonna have to get with Gary to add, to make the actual changes and to take out what needs to be taken out. But it's basically what we discussed and the consensus of how it should be changed. Any particular thing you got to be looking at there in your mind? 14402 ground cover. Yeah, back cool weather graphics. I put that in there, but I don't know if there was ever a consensus to add that.
I think we talked in circles about it a few times and never really got.
Yeah, we didn't
think we got anywhere.
Hey, you want to talk to Eric? Sure, you on that?
Yeah, so Richard and I met and visited from the ID's office. Get some suggestions from him, and they have a lot of good ideas. I think the idea is, what I like to see is put in there that each site has to have an RCS approval for the ground cover. Because each site's gonna be different. Have you heard back on that?
Not yet.
Happy.
We talked to them and emphasized we need to have it wildlife friendly and we need to have it erosion push-free friendly. So they're working really hard on that as we speak, I hope. But Ryan Ferguson's the guy we talked to.
But that seems reasonable to me. They're going to know a lot better, I think, than we will.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I like the fact that, some sites are gonna have absolutely others, different attributes. They should be put in the professional's hands.
And what they were telling us is at some level I knew this, given all the CRP grant I've worked in my life. CRP is really good for wildlife, but it's not the greatest for erosion control. So he said you might have to do some different grasses, year 1 and 2, just to keep the erosion in check, and then phase that out and get your native plants growing like they do in CRP fields. So anyway, he's going to give some verbiage that hopefully we can share and work with when we circle back to that. Okay, Darren, anything else we need to look at, have our eyes on? Change the cap to 4,000 acres, and was it agreed, reviewed by the Board of County Commissioners every 3 years? We talked about. Yeah. And then Daniel had sent me the RPR. And I went ahead and added that whole thing in here so the whole thing could be read. Dan, anything you want to raise about that?
I plagiarized it from a municipal spec and tried to adapt it to where it fit what I thought our intent was. So you guys read through it. I'm open to any suggestions, but I think it covers what we were wanting to accomplish.
if you say your citations, it's not plagiarizing. So you've done it.
It was originally plagiarized and then I reworked it. So that's how my kids use AI to do all their papers at school. So
As long as you give credit to whoever put it, you're free. So you're good. As long as you say it was lifted from somebody else, you're giving credit. Okay.
14408 under toxic material. Will be checked, the ground will be checked biannually for toxicity. And then I think David talked about adding the number 3 about the storage and broken panels, and I'll pull verbiage out of probably Douglas counties for that, because we went through those, Emily had them. And so I'll probably pull verbiage out of that for that. And then obviously present MSDS book on all materials to the county. 14409, we didn't think there was a definition of prime ag land. There is a definition. It's in Article 2. Article 2 under definitions, which it's definitions for the whole set of regulations. Prime agricultural land or prime farmland. Linn County adopts the definition of prime farmland by the U.S. Department of Agriculture for purpose of these regulations. Land that has the best combination of physical and chemical characteristics for producing food, feed, fiber, and oilseed crops, and is available for these uses. It could be cultivated land, pasteurized land, forest land, or other land, but it is not urban or built-up land or water areas. The soil quality, growing season, and moisture supplies are those needed for the soil to economically produce sustained high yields of crop when proper management and acceptable farming methods are applied. In general, prime farmland has an adequate, dependable supply of moisture, a favorable temperature and growing season, acceptable acidity and alkalinity, and acceptable salt and sodium content, and few or no rocks. Prime farmland is permeable to water and air, and it is not excessively erodible or saturated with water for long periods. Slope ranges mainly from 0 to 6%. Like I said, that's under Article 2. And Article 2 is rules, interpretation, and definitions. It's for all 22 articles of the regulations.
Is there a map for the entire county that would show if the proposed site is considered prime or not?
There's a prime ag land map that's on the county website.
Okay.
Under GIS mapping.
Okay.
There's 93,000 acres in the county. Took some hunting to find that, but I went to the mapping department. It's actually, that's within a few hundred. It was 92,800 and something.
Acres of what?
Prime ag.
And do you know what?
Not in my end of the county.
Do you know the percent of the county that ends up?
No, I think the county's is under 400. I know that.
90,
I want to say 360-ish, but that's just a guess. Something.
around a fourth. In rough numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Darren, anything else? I see we've got some red marks on the setback change on 501I.
Oh, yeah. Boundaries of the area and 500 feet, change 500 feet to 1,000 on the site plan.
I was meant to mirror 1,000 feet that appeared elsewhere, but I don't remember what the 1,000 feet was for.
You have to notify everyone within 1,000 foot, I think. That was the reason.
And then under 14-601E, we had some discussion about fencing.
Yeah, we talked about fencing. There was discussion on what type and size. I think Barry spoke on that energy companies, they're required to put up a certain height fence that's like 6 foot, I think he said, and to be chain link.
Is that permanent fence or is that just temporary construction fencing?
Permanent.
Permanent.
He said they previously had used chain link, but he also mentioned that they were moving to a larger opening field. I think it was, I didn't get how big, but something like that.
Right.
The reason I ask, E is, in my mind, is just addressing temporary security fencing, not permanent fencing. I think they're two different topics.
Well, 601 is construction management plan. So
No,
that
I
would-
think you're right, Daniel, because then we get into the buffer plan.
So on installation of temporary fencing, it would be areas deemed to be unsafe if somebody were to wander into those spaces. It's not necessarily fencing the entire perimeter of the project.
Correct.
Okay. That's how most construction sites are managed, so.
There's regulars, paper fence, there's a lay down yard, that one fenced. Right. So there's some security, we usually. Hire some security, so just close some trailers and kind of.
Disappear.
Darren, I don't see any more red print from you. What about the committee?
I would, Darren said he's gonna get with Gary about coming up with the right language to make these changes. To make it easier on us to review that, if he could use track changes in Word to where it leaves the old word there, just crosses it out. That way we're not having to try to compare the old to the new between two different documents. It'd make review of it a lot easier.
Okay.
You familiar with that and use that for? Good suggestion.
I'd like to circle back because we spoke last time, but then we moved on to get through the regulations on the acreage cap.
You want to circle back to that? Okay. What's your-
We brought it
So-
up last time, you said
Yeah,
we would
so-
circle back.
Well, last time I brought up, so I'd reached out to the largest solar field in the state of Kansas currently in operations, 144 acres. So I think us allowing up to 4,000 acres seems to be quite the jump there. I don't think that's dipping our toes in the water by any means. To my knowledge, that's their only field in that county also, but that's the largest operating solar field in the state of Kansas, 144 acres.
Johnson County's capped at 2, with big setbacks from cities and in unincorporated areas. But these are proposed projects that aren't taking place right now.
So you're talking about specific project or the total county?
Total county.
Johnson County's 2,000 per project.
2,000 period. They're only allowing 2,000 acres in Johnson County. Gardner, I think theirs is 3,500.
I don't know. to me, I just think that that's a huge jump from something that's actually in operation, and that it's a completely different magnitude going from 144 to 4,000 acres. I think that's a big leap of the 144 acres is operational. The county hasn't made any money off of it, but I just think jumping to 4,000 seems pretty crazy.
When we talked about this way back when, 4,000 was 1% of the entire acreage in the county approximately.
Right.
And we thought that, and actually, we talked about 8,000 being 2%. So, you know, if you draw yourself a map of Linn County and then you take off 1%, it's a sliver. I mean, it's not,
So I actually have a map I want to present to everyone.
okay.
It's not perfect, so no one can judge. But I did the best I could. So I also think we're working on regulations for the entire county. This map, I can bring it around and show everybody, is the contracts for the county. And that's 48,000 or 4,800 roughly. That's it. Did you guys somewhere there?
Mhm.
So I think when we look at it as a county, you say it's only 1% of the county. When we put it into, bring it around, everybody kind of look at it. But there's already that much leased in one tiny area.
Talking the oranges?
You got
Yeah,
the
what's
oranges.
the- what's the-
And
What's the blue?
What's the legend?
the blue is, the wildlife refuge.
Federal.
So orange is what there's leases on. Josh already pointed out I may be wrong on this little sliver. So that might be in question. That's a historical site. So the blue, they did historical sites and then the wildlife refuge.
How much of this is considered prime farmland?
I didn't get that far into it. I know a lot of this is already tilled, but I don't know exactly how much is prime. Yeah. So
Is that-
I'm just saying, as a county wise, when we talk about the cap,
Right.
we think about splitting it over the county. But then
It's not.
this isn't really split over the county when we already have 4,800 acres in contract. And technically, there's another,
So this is the dam on the power plant, and that's everybody's plant.
and I had actually got this printed before that I realized there's another 100 acres up by the hot water that's leased. So there'd be another 100 up there.
So how much of the county does represent the total map?
And I didn't do the math on that.
This is a small map.
Yeah.
It's like
Right here, that's 1.8 miles.
Probably 10 square miles, roughly.
I can do the math on it, but, so, one thing I have thought of after looking at this,
Less than 10 square.
about this word on.
Less than that.
Less. What is
But
it?
it'd be more than that, because it's about 8 miles across the bottom there, if that's, we can just call it 2 degrees max.
That's just that's less than 2 miles.
2, 4, 6, roughly 8 by 10, so it'd be 80 square miles. Linn County is 600.
I'd go about 6 by 6 maybe.
I can get those. It's not too bad to pull that off. And as you can see, it really stops here, so it's half of this map technically. So, one of my proposals would be doing a acreage cap per township.
Is this the only leased land in Linn County? Right.
That's been filed.
That's been filed with the county.
That's been,
Like I said, there's another 100 acres that would be somewhere up by
How many,
Daniels over.
how many homes are in this?
And Mark, we already have 6,000 acres right there that Evergy owns.
For, wow,
Any homes out in here?
in this here?
Yeah.
No, so
It's all just a block.
all of this, no, there's someone that lives here, and then they have a shop house here. This side, there's a cabin here, there's a house here. House
It's a
here,
state line.
that's it. House here, house here, house here, a couple houses. So I just think, when we talk about it as a whole, it's not really a whole. My thought is if we do acreage caps, we have 11 townships, we could split it between 11 townships.
Yes.
So Mark, let me throw this out as a suggestion before we go here.
Sure.
Uh,
You guys want to see it?
This is pretty new information.
Yep.
I would like to see you make your proposal, and then, let us continue work on the rigs. We probably got 2 more nights of that. Then we'll circle around, give everybody a chance to really consider what you proposed, and we talk about it in about 3 weeks.
Sure.
I don't know what the rest of you think. That's my thinking on it.
That sounds good.
I think this is probably one of the bigger topics.
This and setbacks are gonna be the biggest topic.
Yeah, so I would,
Yeah.
I think what Mark put together there is great, and any more information he can put together to make his case, I think would give us all time to
Yeah.
think about it.
And the other thing we could do is, when we consider this, when we go home in our copious spare time, think about this, shoot Mark, questions that we may have to raise as we consider this issue. That fair?
Just realize this could change so easily. There's roughly 1,100 acres right here they loved it. So then if you add
But
that,
it's not leased.
it could be the sign of a pin. So
Alright.
that's all.
It might be hard to see, but this is the prime ag land map.
Sign.
It's pretty much it.
So basically where we live is gonna become a utility.
I was trying to get
mecca of the
Zoom
county
in.
Yeah.
If everything is put right there.
That's where the resources are.
But there's there's solar farms that are put, that aren't
all of
next to a power plant too.
So this is the lakes, this is north of
Yeah.
here.
That's Listen Lake.
And
So down
there's
here is,
the Masker side over there.
yeah, it's Master Site.
That concerns me.
I made this point before, but leased land is not the same.
Uh, Sorry, nobody can hear from when people are talking in the audience.
Sir, I'd like to hear what you have to say about lease
But
land.
but people that are on live stream can't hear.
Research, could you bring back?
I'm sorry, what?
Nobody can hear people speaking out there.
They don't have a
It's
microphone?
hard because it gets so
Yeah,
small.
I hear you. I hear you.
I mean, just,
Hear you.
I can try to do it though.
You want to come up and get close to the microphone and talk?
The only point I want to make, everyone should understand this by now, but leased land is not the same project area. Right? Like,
Very true.
we laid this out in some of our public meetings where, a permitted area is one thing, the footprint of the project's a third thing, second thing, and leased land is a third. So, public records are showing that this land is under lease. That is not necessarily what a footprint of a project would be or what the permitted area would be. So it's just something else to keep in mind.
So would it be fair to characterize it as preliminary information?
What leased land?
Yeah, lease.
Sure.
Okay, so
But just-
can you speak for the other 3 or 4 solar companies about that?
Nope.
Exactly.
but but
But that's back.
the leases that you have with them, it's their whole land. It may not be encompassed by solar panels, but it's the whole land, which is included in the acreage cap of the project.
Acreage capital
It could be.
project.
So if we're talking 2,000 acres, if we put a 2,000 acre max on that, that means that your 3,000 acre project, which only has 1,300 acres of panels on it, is still 3,000 acres.
Of a permit now,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Not a footprint.
But until there's a conditional use permit, you won't know.
Right.
So let's curtail this.
I have another question for Josh. Josh, you spoke a couple meetings ago about why you are where you are, as far as by the power plant. The way I understood that was you wanted to be close to a substation, which you can no longer use. So basically, this project could be anywhere close to utility lines.
Not the one that we have been studying because of our interconnection studies going on with SPP. So you're not allowed to move that one. So yes, new projects potentially could tap a line somewhere along the, a project could tap a line somewhere along that distance, assuming that you got favorable interconnection results from that.
Bourbon County has 10,000 acres and they don't have a power plant.
Did that answer your question? Like you can connect, you
So
need,
I guess just, what other parts of the county would be viable for you to consider?
I'd have to analyze it. I'd have to take a look at land use like we've done, constraints, interconnection possibilities, capacity on the lines that are there, and a whole slew of other sort of greenfield development items that we do for all of our projects.
So Josh, the idea now, as you heard the discussion, we're gonna park this for tonight. We're gonna circle back and have a full discussion after everybody's had ample time to consider what, Mark has been proposing. Can you do some homework on that and?
Yeah.
And, share it with Darren so he can share it with all of us?
Sure.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
I can do that.
Yeah,
Thanks, Josh.
okay.
Kind of banking off of what Mark said and what Josh is talking about, I did some research because we're going to be talking about buffers and setbacks and whatnot. And I was looking at the wildlife and I came across an article and it's based on what the current administration is pushing and it's from National Wildlife Federation. And I just want, because we talked at the commission meeting and there's a lot of people that are against this and we're here going forward with pushing this project in good faith. But I just want to read something to you so you understand it's not just Linn County, if that's okay.
Are you saying the current presidential administration?
Yes, with the renewable energy plan and what the money that they're pushing for subsidies throughout the country.
Okay.
It might just give you a little perspective. It's just a paragraph,
Okay.
if I may. They're talking about the Biden administration's push for net zero emissions. And it says the build out is essential. It will also take a lot of land. According to Princeton study, under a net zero scenario that does not rely on nuclear energy and the natural gas with carbon capture, the U.S. energy footprint quadruples in size. Wind farms would occupy lands areas equivalent to Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Oklahoma combined. That means that's what wind would cover. Even if we rely heavily on the build out of many new nuclear plants and natural gas plants with carbon capture and storage, there would still be a need for another 59 million acres of new wind farms, 3.5 million acres of solar development, an area larger than Illinois and Indiana. And then offshore covers another 15 million acres by 2050. So it's not, I know that we're dealing just with the county, but we went and listened to Mike Thompson, weatherman, very involved in the Utilities Commission in Kansas. And I said it in our planning and zoning meeting that our carbon put off right now is 0.4 parts per million. This is based on his information, not mine. And it's the lowest it's ever been. And to get to net zero, once we get to 0.2, the trees start dying and they cannot live. Once we get to zero, not that we would ever actually get to it, but if we get to it, we're dead because there's no carbon put off into the atmosphere, and that's what protects us from the sun. So this is a massive, massive area of land that's being pushed, and we are getting contacted every day by other states, and then you talk about the eminent domain with the transmission lines that they're going to need to push this into southeast Kansas. It's not just our county. And I just wanted to be on record. I'm not an expert on it, but I've listened to the experts. They've offered to come and talk. I just think everybody needs to be cognizant of what we're being a part of right here. And I will leave that at that.
You do realize there was a time before man-made energy, and we weren't emitting carbon.
But there was carbon in the air because the trees put off carbon, and when they die, carbon, they like to use carbon, but it's carbon dioxide. It's not a physical substance. So, I mean, I would, huh? No, no, not at all. I've listened to the experts and I've listened to what I like to come in here and be laughed at. That is incredible. Thank you very much. Because I am very passionate about where I live and the county and the people that are following us and want us to be here. So, I mean, if you want me to, I can laugh at you all day long, but I'm not.
let's stop that. Let's go. We're gonna circle back after we go through the regulations. I think we can get through our goal tonight, just, get through 14.801. I think we'll have one more session to do to finish this up, and then the third session from tonight, we could circle back and have another discussion about this. We've all done some homework and can definitively report what we know. Fair enough?
Before we jump into that, I watched the county commissioners meeting, and it seemed like they gave us some direction in that meeting. Did you pay it? And maybe Darren needs to inform us, but Danny called what we were doing a shit show.
Yeah.
And wanted us to stop. The commissioners all said we needed to get together and present them a plan of how we wanted to move forward. And they were expecting us, Darren, to bring that back on Monday. And Darren just walked out of the room as a brother. So I just want to make sure we talked about it. I watched the commissioners meeting today. Mark was there, so he can probably speak better to me, but it was very clear that they wanted us to basically draw up a plan, tell them how we were going to move forward.
Okay, so was this just discussion or was there a motion?
It's discussion.
So they didn't give us a recommendation in form of a motion?
Defer to Darren.
They always just.
They said it was up to us how we wanted to run the meetings.
Yeah, there was a half-hour conversation around it. When they left it, the way they closed it was they were expecting.
I have not heard anything from any of the commissioners on this at all.
Darren,
Yeah.
you were in the commissioners meeting when they were talking about wanting us to come up with a path forward and bring it back to them next week.
Yep.
So that's why I just brought up to Richard. I watched the commissioners meeting today, and before we jumped into doing this, once again, I feel like the commissioners haven't really given us clear direction, but they left that, the way I interpret it was, they had some deliverable they wanted from us next week. Do you agree?
Yeah, and my understanding from David or from Jason and Danny was to go through the regulations and have them done before the public forum.
That they wanted us to draft language about the announcement we were going to make for the public forum.
Right.
And bring that back.
Right.
Yeah, I think then they were expecting that to be brought back next week.
Yes. Yeah.
So there was that piece of it that I remember them talking about. And then they also wanted our recommendation on whether we stop working on these until after the public forum or we continue to work on them. They went back and forth a lot, but I think they all said, well, let's let them tell us how they feel like they should move forward. Maybe I'm wrong. And to your point, if they didn't make a motion like they never do to give us any real clear written direction.
Well, last week I sat here and said, if we need to stop this because it's totally work, let's stop now. And we all decided that we'd forge through and get these regulations done, and then we'd see what the options were once we're done with our work.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just wanted to make sure we were aware of what.
Well, unless they've got a motion telling me to do something different, I ain't gonna do it.
Okay.
We're gonna go exactly with the plan we laid out as a group last week.
Okay. Well, they didn't make a motion to ask for our to tell us to deliver them a recommendation for what the announcement looks like that we're going to spread to Polk County. But I know they're expecting us to give it to them.
What type of announcement are they seeking?
So they are going to send out. They talked to Jayhawk School District, and they were going to talk to Prairie View, and they were going to talk to Pleasanton, to all the superintendents, and use the distribution system via text message and email that goes out to all the citizens. To send a message out about the public forum that we're recommending that we have. So they wanted us to figure out what that message is, and then the county was going to send it out through their emergency management system as well via text message.
And there'll be an ad in the paper.
Yeah, and an ad in the paper. And they
they
wanted us to put all that tell them what that needed to say.
The original newspaper ad that happened before all this, I think it just basically stated, I don't have it in front of me. I think it was like a change to regulation, so I don't think everyone really felt informed
They
of-
didn't,
of
they didn't
what-
list any of the renewable energies. It was
Right,
just
so
the
it's just.
new
so-
articles.
So the commissioners thought, we as a team should come up with a way to where we felt like it will cover of what it's going over. And not, that way the wordage is right, that way, we don't have somebody else making up the verbiage of it, and it says, come to this public forum to speak about renewables or just, it could be anything, and he thought if we had a whole team working on it, it would be better. The verbiage, that way, they could use it in the paper, and like you said, the phone systems, and even the fire department said there's some way they can send out stuff, so
That's the article.
there's several.
So Rich, what's your vision about how we proceed and what the plan is?
I think we continue to work on these revised, these regulations and revise them just like we've been in the last 2 to 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks now. And we complete that work. And then we start talking about either we're gonna have a public forum or we're gonna have a scientific survey. And we need to talk about which one of those we're gonna do. I think that is a decision that needs to be made by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So once we're done here with our work, it comes back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to decide how we move this forward with direction from the commissioners. Well, let me tell you what, I haven't heard a word from them.
So it was-
Can I, when we originally asked for the moratorium, when we were in the process of working, trying to push for that, one of the things that the commissioners did was they gave us our public forum. Then they did the moratorium, which pushed it back here. And when we asked them about it at the commission meeting, they're like, you can have your public forum there, because that's all we've ever fought for, was to have the people heard.
So from my understanding, they're having Darren set up the public forum meeting with Prairie View now, currently, they're going to have that in about 30 days.
They agreed to have a public forum, and I'm waiting on yes or no from Prairie View. As far as the scientific study, that's gonna have to be asked to the commissioners, if they're willing to do that. I did talk to Gary about it. Gary says that there does not have to be a vote on it. If there's a consensus to take it to him, I could take him and ask him Monday if they're willing to do a scientific study.
Well, I thought we said we were gonna put it in front of them to do a scientific study or put it on the ballot, right? Or do whatever that
But
election.
what I'm saying is I think that recommendation ought to come from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Once we've got once we've had a chance to go through the regs and get those updated.
I think maybe we talked about a vote, we talked about surveys, you certainly offered a lot there. I think the public forum is gonna give the county and the commissioners an idea of whether we need to go that next step. Whether we need to have a vote, whether we need to have a scientific survey, whatever we need. So I think we might be getting the cart before the horse if we're talking vote or we're talking a survey.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just want to make sure everyone is aware that a public forum, the commissioner said, is happening, and they've tasked Darren with setting.
So I think from what I didn't listen to the entire meeting, from what I heard, the commissioners really want to publicize this forum. They don't want to let any stone unturned. So they're talking about ads, they're talking about using the systems, the school systems notification, they're talking about our notification. They want everybody to know about this meeting. And at that point, after that meeting, that's when either the planning committee or the commissioners want to say, okay, do we have enough information or not? We need to take the next step. So my thought is, and I was on the fence on this last week about these regulations, but I think we should continue to work the regulations so when you have the public forum, the people know what it's going to look like or what it could look like if you go ahead with the solar and you don't have prohibition. And then you take input from that public forum and you change it from there.
I agree with you saying, David. One of the things that I think we've consistently been on the same page about, all of us have been on, it's better to do this slow and do it right than to push through it and make some mistakes. So I'm on the track to finish our work with the revising the regulations, take it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to see where they want to go with the public forum or how that looks and all the publicity we get on that. And just make sure we've got every I dotted, every T crossed, and make sure we do this thing right so it serves the best interest of the county.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't think the commissioners given direction to start with the public forum. They said first week they told Darren, let's plan to have it the first week of March. And they wanted 30 days from the time. So if Darren gets the thumbs up from Prairie View next week, they want to start publicizing right now and have it. Like they were pushing to do it.
I thought Darren said, I want to do it 30 days after we're done.
I thought he said 30 days
He
after.
wants 30 days notice, what I heard.
Yeah.
He wants 30 days notice. Right. So there's no direction to have it first of March, end of February.
They brought up probably the 1st of March, but it's the middle of January, and if I can get, from the day that they make contact back with me, I'm gonna ask for 30 days, unless you want it further out than that.
Yeah, that's where I was, Richard, you kept saying go back to planning and zoning and let them recommend to do the forum. I don't think they're waiting on planning and zoning to recommend doing the forum. The commissioners are expecting this forum to happen.
They already granted us
I
that.
think it's right.
Yeah.
I think they're expecting form.
Yeah.
Anything else is a different story, but I think the form they're expecting it. I'd also think they're expecting us to come up with a draft on not how, but what to put in those messages, ads or whatever. We should be working on that as far as the layout is concerned.
So I've got the notice of public hearing. Now, it's not gonna be a hearing, it'll be a forum, but here's the notice we sent out for the complete set of regulations. Public notice is hereby given that the Linn County Planning Commission will conduct a public hearing on proposed zoning regulations, subdivision regulations, and zoning map. The public hearing will be held such and such time at such and such location. The proposed zoning and subdivision regulations and zoning map would, upon adoption of the Linn County Board of County Commissioners, establish rules for the creation and regulation of zoning districts, place properties within districts, list the permitted and conditional use within each district, and set rules for the development of land in unincorporated Linn County. Members of the public are invited to attend and participate at the public hearing. So,
But it doesn't say anything about solar, which
That's
is
just the
why.
generic. That was
why
the
we're-
first one they used.
Oh, that was the first
Yeah,
one.
the very
Okay.
first
right, that's when we done the complete.
That's the one that no one came to.
All
Right.
22 articles were involved. in that.
I don't know.
Very few came to.
So that's not what you're using now.
No, that's just an idea.
That was-
And I think we can just change some of the wording to say
I think-
Article 14.
I personally think you need
Solar.
to make that really simple. I think you need to make it, if you put an ad, it may be different wording for different notifications, right? You may use different wording for the text system you're sending out on the schools. That may be really short and sweet.
Yeah, and I'll probably I'll make a note to call Sean with the school tomorrow and ask him if there's a word minimum that they allow or what they can send out.
And then for an ad in the paper, it may be something completely different. But for an ad in the paper, you want to make it a lot simpler than that.
I can tell you what you're gonna send out. There's not enough. I get texts that are 4 paragraphs long from them. So you can make it as long as you want, but I don't think it needs to be.
Right.
Is there any legalese in there that has to be stipulated or
In
stated?
the paper.
Yeah, it'd be just the paper, right?
Since it's a forum, I don't know if I think that's why Gary wanted a forum.
Right.
Because you're not proposing language
not-
that's
it's not a
in the form
hearing.
of a ballot.
Right.
It's not a.
So, like a simple note that I've got it down would be along the lines of the Linn County Board of County Commissioners is seeking public input regarding potential revisions to the previously adopted zoning regulations for solar energy conversion system. And you list date, time, and locations. So It makes solar the emphasis there, and says we already have adopted regulations, and they could potentially be changed based on your input.
The only thing I think it would be handy as well to, even if it was in the text, to give a link to the county website that takes them to where they are, because you're gonna have all these guys that say, I have no idea where you can find these regulations.
And so that was gonna be my.
And it would be good to have a draft of what we're proposing, but I don't know, that's what I'm saying, to your point, are we gonna be able to have that done by March?
Right. That was gonna be my next question. I mean, is the commissioner's goal to have these gone through so that they feel like someone can look at this as a resource and say, okay, I can now speak intelligently about my concerns about the zoning regulations for solar energy. I would hope that a town hall isn't meant to be a referendum on why I want or don't want solar energy, but rather the concerns that I have for things that are either included or not included in the regulations so that they can be revised as such. Because it's a separate conversation of, do I want this in my county versus if it's in my county, I want to make.
I
I would
disagree.
disagree, because the whole reason we're having this open forum is because we talked to the commissioner so many times that they truly don't know if the citizens of Linn County want
Want
this or not.
this.
And that was the reason they granted us.
It's not about educating them, it's about listening to the people that come there to express their opinion in 2 minutes. Whether-
they're educated or not about the topic.
And I take offense to that because I'm an educated person. The people we talk to are educated. You are assuming that they're going up there based on emotion and not that, I mean, you've said this several meetings and I just take offense to it. Just like you laughing at me. We are very well educated people that know what we want. And we've been given the opportunity to tell you what you want because we've been appointed by all the people that don't want it. So just don't assume because they sit up there and they say they don't want it, they're not educated. I would just ask you not to use that verbiage.
So I would like to hear from people who have read the regulations. And so I guess it is an assumption on my part. The overwhelming majority of people who would come speak have read every one of these pages.
I think that's a lot to ask of the citizens. I think the reason we're having the public forum is to know if the county wants it or not, without the regulations, to be completely honest. Because how the regulations are written or not, they could still have the consensus if they truly wanted this or don't want this. The public forum wasn't about the regulations. The public forum was about if the citizens wanted this or not.
So I think, I tend to agree with you. I think that the forum is for people to speak that want it and people to speak that don't want it. I think they'll go through all these regulations. I think that's a pipe dream. I don't think they're
I
gonna.
think you're going to touch on it.
You may get,
Oh, going to be emotional.
But it's both sides.
right, and you may get some people that say they would want it if this was changed. You may get that. And it may not be from them looking at the regulations. It may be from word of mouth. They may say, I wouldn't mind it being in our county, except, and then those would be things that we would need to look at for the regulations also. I mean, that's another thought. I don't think you're gonna get always strict yes and no's.
I agree with you.
I think you'll get a lot of hands raised one way or the other. but-
And regardless of what we think or what we want, it's a public forum and they get 2 minutes to speak. They can say whatever the hell they want.
Whatever they-
Right, so, yeah.
And the other thing I'd like to
The
say,
chair could ask it to be
not
but
only should we encourage to speak, but there's some people don't like to get in front of a microphone. So we ought to have an avenue for them to express their views via writing. Whether
Or
it's-
raise,
whether it's an
you can
email,
ask
whether
them
it's-
when you're there, you can have them, do you want it or not? And you get a consensus.
But you ought to, we ought to
It-
have some forum to say you're welcome to speak for or against, or you're welcome to submit your thoughts in writing, and this is how you do it.
So if that's what the county commissioners want, to hear input on whether Linn County is pro-solar or anti-solar, it should be presented as such, not a discussion about zoning regulations, because they're two very different things. What I stated from the outset of the process was regulations aren't put in place based on the leadership that exists at any given moment, because those leaders aren't going to be here. Those three county commissioners aren't necessarily going to be in those seats in 10 years or even in 4 years. And so if our county adopts regulations that we are confident will protect the landscape and make sure that we don't have too much toxicity out there and that we're planting the right kind of grasses and all the things to make solar energy, if it's implemented, done right, those can sit there and be adopted, whether or not they're used. Because if they aren't put in place, and our leaders that say we don't want solar energy right now have turnover and we do want solar energy, you're completely back to the drawing board or a starting point. So I see value in getting these right, even if the purpose of the public forum isn't to seek input on this, but rather gather information whether someone's supportive or not supportive of solar energy in any form in the county.
I guess my question would be, is legally, can you put the provision in that would take effect? Or is if it's 10 or 12 years down the road, this world changes so much by the day, if these would be so outdated by then?
I think.
They'll be revisited as many times.
Yeah, I
Right.
think, Darren probably should speak to this, but if you get in the regulations prohibition on solar, then it's in the regulations. If you ever change that, you have to go through the whole process. Planning committee, and you have to have public hearings. Any change in zoning regulations, you have to go through that whole process. Is that right?
That's correct.
So like with wind energy, do we have the backup set?
No.
Prohibition,
no.
right, because you need to start from square one.
So no matter what we decide at this point, and I don't know how the public forum is going to go, but let's say 2,000 people show up for it or against it. What does that mean to you? I mean, we come back in here the next week and you go, oh, they want it or they don't want it, and then you present it to the commissioners to make a vote on it?
No, I think the public input, from my understanding, is part of the Golden versus Overland Park. I mean, that's one of your finding facts. And then, so to me, if one of the finding facts is the public input is one of the facts of Golden versus Overland Park. And that one weighs pretty hard on the county of the other rest of the finding facts. So I just wonder, is it smart to sit here and work on regulations for the county when we don't know that first step? Because to me, the first step is knowing if the citizens want it, and that's for building the regulations, or if you want to use the Golden versus Overland Park and find the facts, put a prohibition in place that are kind of or speaking out both sides of our mouth by doing the regulations and possibly turn around and do a prohibition. Because I read through a lot of the finding facts and in the comprehension plan, there's plenty of stuff that supported prohibition. So I just wonder if we're talking out both sides of it.
I just go back to last week and I said, hey, if there's gonna be a prohibition on this, let's stop this work. It's gonna be throwaway work.
Right.
And as a group, we decided to keep moving forward. I bought into that. I think that we just need to have those regulations finished so people can know where we're at, where we are, or where we will be at that point in time. And then that can be really good information for those pro and those con for the forum or the public hearing or whatever you want to call it. And Emily, to answer your question, I don't know what we'll learn. I mean, I'm going to go into this thing open-minded and listen to everybody, both sides, and then come back and say, well, what did we learn? And I have no preconceived notions about what that might be. But the preconceived notion I have is that Linn County will have a chance to speak and we'll be able to ascertain what the temperature is on this issue.
And it won't be the last time either. If we just, no matter what the planning committee decides, regulations or prohibitions, it still has to go through a public hearing.
Right.
Again, right. So this is going to be a long process, and I think we're wise to take it slow and deliberately and end up making good decisions for the county.
Then I have one question, because we've talked about, well, while we're going through them, that can be done at the conditional use permit process. But at that time, we won't have any input whatsoever because the ad hoc group won't have any input into it. So when we had brought up some of the other things that were in the regulations, as other county regulations, as far as the soil testing, which we addressed, the noise study, there's other studies that are in there. Once we leave and we're done, we have no input into that. So I'm trying to figure out where the fine line is to make sure that we're protected if this moves forward and it's not just pushed aside once it comes to the conditional use
Well,
permit.
once the regulations are in their final process or form, that's what we use to consider a CUP, conditional use permit. And it's up to the planning and zoning board to decide what conditions we put on the organization that is before us. And then that has to be approved by the county commissioners.
Part of that process, there's
Yeah, doesn't
There's
there have to
public
be a
comment.
hearing on that?
Yeah, yeah,
There has to be a hearing on every.
right, yeah.
Every conditional
Every
use
case, you
permit.
bet.
yeah,
And
and
it's open to anyone in the county to come and speak.
Absolutely. We do it all the time. Conditional use permit comes in and people,
But it doesn't.
both sides come in and say their piece and then the planning board and commission ends up making a decision.
Well, that's why I want to get the regulations right, because I hear what you're saying. This is our chance to get it right up front, so your concerns are addressed, and then you can hold a county commissioner's feet to the fire when you say, well, you're considering a waiver for this. It doesn't fit within the regulations. It offers the protection that you're seeking.
Well, I can see how you would think that. However, a lot of us landowners feel that once it goes to conditional use permit, it's out of our hands. And that's the big consensus. I don't know. I've never been involved with, hey, this is going in next to you. You might be pleasantly surprised. But I mean, we know what our rights are. And if it doesn't get put in the conditional use permit, then we can fight it in court there. I mean, I guess I answered my own question.
But you also have the opportunity to during the cut process, to speak your mind. You and anybody else that wants to speak. That's just part of the process. Yeah. So where are we?
What do you think? What do you think?
Well, we go forward and we finish up these.
That was,
Paul?
I don't have anything to add, really. My understanding is that we're got parallel rails running. One is to prepare for this public meeting. Two is to finish going through these. My understanding from the Monday meeting was we're still headed through these. And my one question is, did you get your question answered? Because you started the conversation Monday with one basic question: is where do I insert into this process my concerns as wanting a ban? And did you get that question answered?
Not really. So
Okay, well,
perfect.
let me offer an
Okay.
answer, because I think Richard offered an answer and he just didn't know it. When we were gonna make room at the end for more of an open discussion to do the circle back stuff, do you feel like that would be a place where you could lay out a case in this forum, not the public meeting? Because you were asking Monday about having opportunity in this forum, right?
Right. So, and I've asked a couple times from the commissioner's direction upon that. And I've got a very muddy answer every time, because I'll quote him. Jason says, well, he gave us the power, whatever, the privilege, however you want to state it, I guess, that's what we should be doing in these meetings. So when we're talking about these regulations, he's like, that's your time to be presenting your case. I don't want to be the ass that sits up here and every time we talk about a paragraph and says, well, I don't think that should be in there because these findings support a ban or prohibition, right? Like, I don't want to be that person. And so I guess I still never got that completely answered. And I think it's weird to work on the whole regulations when we don't know if the county wants it, and then I don't really support it. If we are going to have it, then I understand, yes, working on these regulations like we've talked about is great, because there was a lot of concerns that have been brought up. I just think it's kind of ass backwards. I'm sorry, I can't think of another way to say it. To do the regulations and then you turn around and possibly do the findings for a prohibition. I think that you're putting the cart in front of the horse.
Talking out
That's
both
all-
sides of
That's
your
all
mouth.
I've got to say about it.
And
I understand that completely. I'm just giving you just a different perspective. We're here working on this together, and you have a voice in every single one of these that we're going through. And whether we're finding common ground that's to your liking or not,
Negotiation.
Yeah, everyone's trying to get there. So say, if everyone in the county was sitting in this room right now and we took a vote and everybody but one person said they wanted to put a ban on solar, then I gotta think that the county commissioners are gonna say, we're putting a prohibition on solar. Flip the script the other way. They don't. And the majority of the people in the county voted and said, we want solar. Then you are gonna wanna make sure you had your input into these regulations.
And we've discussed that.
Yeah, so I get the point of what you're saying completely, that are we just completely wasting our time by doing this for a prohibition? But we're not gonna know that until if the county commissioners ever decide to do some kind of scientific study or vote or whatever, so they can make that determination. We have no idea if they'll ever do it. And I'd like to think that they would, because several people have requested it. But
I think
you're not gonna have the opportunity to go through these if we don't do it.
right.
And I'll just make an observation about the county commissioners. I don't think there's any consensus at all on where they are with this issue. I think each individual of the three, each individual has a different place they're at. And part of it may be waiting on us to finish our work until they come up and make a strong statement one way or the other.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I'm going to beat this horse, and it's not dead. I feel pretty strongly about statistics. Because of the comprehensive, like I said last week, because of the comprehensive plan, because the survey is published in the comprehensive plan, I feel pretty strongly that that data needs to reflect the county. And so I won't talk much longer on that, but I'm gonna keep my hooks in that until the end of this process, because we can't have regulations and moving forward as a county that seemingly contradict our comprehensive plan. And I know it doesn't contradict the rural stuff, but because we have that survey in there, we need to deal with it. We can't lean on the comprehensive plan for wind and ignore the comprehensive plan for solar if in fact we were to move forward as you hope for a ban. You can't have it both ways. So it may be the last thing we do, but I'm going to keep my hooks in that. I believe it must be done because of the comprehensive plan.
So I guess like what exactly do you mean by that? So you think there has to
Well,
be
like we talked about
a-
last week, something that's relatively objective, a survey, a referendum on the ballot, the best we can do that's objective, to basically replace the survey that's in the comprehensive plan with verbiage and results that all of us are comfortable are fair representation, because I think most of us, I would say all, but I don't know, most of us, I believe, think that survey was poorly worded, misunderstood, and is not a fair representation of what's happening right now.
Great.
And because of, like I outlined last week, 5 things, the comprehensive plan being one, we can't just ignore it.
Right.
No matter how, if all 9,000 people show up to the public thing, I still feel pretty strongly that there needs to be a lawyer-happy bunch of data that we can update the comprehensive plan and that thing so that all of our ducks are in a row. No matter what we come up with in the end, it needs to be a tight case.
So how do you, I'm sorry, Mark, how do you update the comprehensive plan?
Same as we do everything else. If we have the information and we go through the process of, we make a recommendation, the county commissioners say yes, that has to go to public forum. It's the same process as everything else.
So I guess just my question, the public forum, if you had, and I'll play it both ways so we're fair. If you had 2,000 people show up to it, and let's just say 50 of them were pro and the rest were against, is that an update? Or does it have to be something more scientifically, or vice versa? If
I think,
1,950 people want it,
I don't,
I think that's an update.
because it's
Jumping on you here, but I,
We don't know if they're.
I don't know.
but that's up to,
Neither is on the mailing. You don't,
That's
there's
up-
no guarantee whoever filled it out.
that's up to the
Resident.
commission.
Or the deal that people were signing it with.
Correct.
I don't know. I don't know. But like I said, I want in the end for all of us to be confident.
Right. Obviously, you want more responses than what was in the comp plan.
Yes.
I mean, favorably.
And to Jeff's point, there's a way of tracking. People get up to speak, you do it in Topeka. Who you are, where you live, same
So-
with the written responses.
I may be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong if Gary or somebody says, no, that's not necessary.
Right.
It's just the way. So that's enough of me
Ally,
and my horse.
You want to talk?
Well, I was just wondering if we possibly, if we're going to look into, if we're gonna look into different avenues, such as the survey you had mentioned, the phones, the referendum, would it be a possibility to have Jessica reach back out to IBTS and just do a quote on the one survey just over solar again?
I think.
Does that make sense?
Again, I think getting the cart before the horse. I think they've given us the opportunity, given everyone the opportunity to have this forum. You have the forum, and then you decide whether you have enough information. If you don't have enough information, then you look at that, you look at the vote, you look at surveys, whatever.
I was just thinking because we've already worked with IBTS, maybe they would give us a discount because you were saying yours is going to be around $20,000. It was an average around 20. The vote or on the ballot, it was like 14 to 15,000. I think David and Gary both said that. If it would be a cheaper option.
I just think if you have clear and convincing evidence at the open forum, then there's no reason to even continue to talk about it. So.
That's fine. We can just like David said, we could just cross that bridge when we get.
Again, take one step
And I
at a time.
just, I didn't want it to
Maybe they
be.
need muddier than now, when we get out of the public forum, or maybe clear and convincing.
I do have one question for you, David. In these forums where you've seen them before, where they can turn in written information, how does that written information get processed? Who reads it? Who decides? How's that whole thing work?
So I think the planning committee could read it.
Commissioners can
You
read
have
it.
to have a point person. Generally in Topeka, when they do it, the administrative assistant for the chair of the committee gathers all that information. There's rules about when it has to be in. And
They divided into proponent and
yeah,
opponent.
yeah, proponent or opponent. And then that information, just like the committee's gonna listen to the people speak at the public forum, and that's available to the committee to read.
Okay, all right.
So it's not read at the public forum, it's just given to the,
Give it to the deciders.
Given as written testimony.
okay.
Usually asked to be received prior to the hearing. That way they have a chance to peruse it and have a specific question or want to make statements regarding some of the public input.
Someone makes regard to that particular
It's
communication.
obvious
yes.
sometimes when it has been read and when it hasn't prior to the meeting.
So is that something that I wasn't quite clear on that. You guys would review, or somebody else would review and give you guys a report on? Or us, I guess, us.
I think all of us would review.
I think everybody in this room would read that.
If then it's submitted, it becomes a matter of public record, so someone can request a copy of anything else.
But I think we push copies to everybody sitting in this room, plus the ones that didn't make it tonight. I've been through these kind of things before, and I'll say it again, I said earlier, I just want to hear the tenor of the room. I'm not looking so much for anybody's hard stance on this. I want to look at the spirit of what they're thinking and why they're thinking it, and what the process is, the spirit of the thing that brought them to where they are. I'm going to be listening real carefully for that, and that's going to help me decide what's in the best interest of the county. So. I think sometimes we get caught up with what they say literally and really miss the message they're trying to get from the spirit of where they're really coming through this.
So the good thing is they only have 2 minutes. They're not gonna say a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I think with that, it's not going over the regulations, it's more about us them as a citizen, if they want it in their county, I think they'll keep it pretty short.
What I think would be one of the most powerful things, Mark, and I don't know if I'm, giving you due ammunition here, it doesn't matter, this isn't meant to be a me versus you. I'm someone that wants to be open-minded to this, because I feel like this is an opportunity to help with the tax coffers in our county.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only reason our county should consider solar energy, is if it can make a real difference in terms of tax revenue. If it can't, I don't know why we consider, set the green energy component aside, you know? Some of that stuff.
I think you can set the green energy. aside. I think that that's one of the main reasons that we're talking about solar in the first place. The tax benefit sort of wasn't it for me, as accounting, right? But, I mean, the science, I think, is overwhelming that global warming is happening and that humans are a primary cause of it. The end result of where we're heading on the global warming and what it means for doom and gloom or increased plant growth, I'm not even going to go into those speculations, but those two things I do know that's happening and that we are the primary cause.
So I'll restate my position then. There is a large number of people that would disagree with what you just stated. I may or may not be one of them. That word, what I think our county commissioners are most likely going to make their decision on is going to make a difference for the tax coffers of Linn County. And if they feel like this is a real opportunity to either expand services to our residents or reduce taxes for our residents, those are equally important, as well as, is there any concern at some point that they close the Evergy plant? So set the green energy aside just for that part of the conversation. If our county commissioners believe that there's another opportunity for us to generate tax revenue without constructing 10,000 new roofs within the county, they'd want to hear it. And it would possibly make solar energy go away. But I don't think that that's realistic in our county. And I also don't see what else has the potential to generate this much tax revenue with a small workforce needed. And so that's why we're talking about this, in my opinion.
My question would be, do you have any proof that it will generate that type of tax revenue?
You
Do
don't.
I have proof of that? So our county gets to determine what the tax rates are and what mills are allocated for those.
If they get
So-
paid.
So, like I stated at one of our first meetings, was the purpose of the pilot program. So we give them funding to get off the ground, and it's made up temporarily through something like pilot. It has worked very well in Anderson County with the ethanol plant. And for all the people that laughed and thought ethanol was chopped up by the government, it's still going strong.
Right.
So.
What happens if those subsidies run out?
Love to know that from the ethanol plant as well.
I just don't think, I think, if we're gonna get into a little bit of theories here, I think if everybody wasn't so worried about the power plant shutting down, that this wouldn't be nearly as big in Linn County as what it is right now.
Are you worried about the power plant shutting down? Like what it would
I
do?
think it's, something's always gonna shut down eventually, right? Nothing's ever, I think everybody gets pretty worked up that it's stated with the register with Kansas, it's gonna shut down in 32 or 39, something like that. But that number's changed a lot throughout the years.
You know what percentage of our taxes originate from the power plant?
I think,
Two-thirds of the county tax revenue comes from that power plant.
see, I was told 60% with all, not just out of the power plant, it's all, so like the Enbridge gas line, all utilities. is
I've got a question for
17 million a year.
Mr. Danny back. Would you mind addressing that if you don't mind?
It is 66% of the tax for the power plant, and you got the gas line, I think it's like 12%, I think it's like right at $8 or something like that.
Oh, it's more than that. The gas line's like, I think it's like 3 or 4 million.
No, I'm gonna have to answer that,
Just talk.
So with the closure, our tax revenue could fall 66%.
Good scenario, yeah.
Hence the discussion.
Right. But I think everybody poses those as two things into one, and it is realistically two different issues.
expand on it for me, I'm following you.
Because everybody lumps the power plant closing and pushing this to happen in Linn County to cover that cost. But I think that's two different issues. I think,
It sounded like you were saying that the loss of tax revenue and the power plant closing were two different issues. That's the way it came across to me. I don't know.
so I'm saying if we do lose our tax income because the power plant shuts
We
down,
lose 66% of our
Right.
revenue,
that's one issue.
and there's no other way to replace that we know of right at this moment.
Right. So that's one issue. The other issue is,
That's a lot of money.
agreed. The other issue is, does Linn County want solar? The other issue is, can it actually replace that?
Well,
But a lot of times, I think those all
We
get
don't
lumped
know
in
that.
one.
We don't know how much they replace.
Right.
I forget which of you two gentlemen said this, but we wouldn't be having this argument if there wasn't money to be gained by this.
Right.
So,
Sure.
I mean, nobody wants to do it, just,
Question, the big question is, we don't know how much.
Right.
It's all negotiated before the code.
Well, I know that we have had the power plant and my taxes just keep going up. So having the power plant here does not prevent that from happening.
I think too,
Taxes always go up.
assessor office, it's, everybody's went up a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that was just decisions on the assessor's part.
So there's three ways your taxes could go down. We reduce services offered to the citizens. We construct more roofs in our county because homes are taxed at a much higher rate than their agricultural land. Or we attract more businesses in that are taxed differently because of how they're zoned, as well as bringing more people here. And so one of the things on the table helps address that. We can't do anything about the other two. Go ahead.
Technically, if we do that, you could potentially lose homes or have less people come build here too. So I think that's something we thought of.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the biggest things with all of this is that my biggest concern, obviously it's around my family farm, but I find it frustrating that a lot of people look at it as it's an issue for the whole county, and it is, don't get me wrong, but I don't think my tiny corner should pay the debt of the whole county either. And we already have the power plant there. We have the wildlife refuge there. The Enbridge pipelines run through there. It's just, there's a lot of resources used out of that area. And I just want, when everybody thinks about this and they talk about it countywide, to realize where the projects are being submitted right now. That's
The
my
reality, I get what you're saying, and I agree. But the reality is, there's a lot of resources centered in northeast part of the county. It's just the way it is. I mean, there's more population there. The power plant, the wildlife areas. I mean, it's just a rich area for the county.
Coal mine, employed so many people for so many years.
Yeah. So historically, the northeast part of our county has just been vital to us.
Right. I just think that when we're thinking on these regulations, it needs to be looked at that way.
I get that.
I mean,
It's,
why not do 200 acres in our part, 200 acres in another part? Because it wouldn't take place. That's, in all reality, it just wouldn't.
I think
You're
that's,
saying the energy companies wouldn't go for that?
Probably
He
not.
wouldn't do it. No, I mean, they want it all confined in one area and not take advantage of anything else.
but realistically, that's my opinion of the township, split it between the townships. Because then you spread it across the county instead of putting it in one tiny corner. It's either that or when we sit in here and think on these regulations, we figure out a way to protect every area of the county and not 90% of it and put it all in 10. So it's pretty heavy hearted to live with. I know you can't control what your neighbors do. I know that's brought up a lot, but they're not building a pond. They're not putting up a barn. It's a big deal.
Not even a feedlot. I would appreciate that.
Emily, you've been quite quiet through this whole process.
Emily, Elizabeth.
All right. Comment? You've been pretty quiet.
You've got to have a list over there by now.
I like to hear everyone else base my opinions on that. Let's see.
If you're still forming your opinion, that's fine.
I
just want to give you a chance to talk.
I kind of am still forming my opinion. I'm not entirely sure how splitting between townships would work, whether that even be financially feasible, and whether that would be prohibited for solar, whether that could cause problems for us. But I don't know if that's something we really need to concentrate on, or
I was pondering that very thought here. You know, we pay certain taxes to our township for maintenance within the township itself. But the bulk of our taxes are sent outside of our township to the county proper or to the school district. And then they're divided up to meet the needs of all residents within. And so I'm grateful that the more populated areas that are generating more tax revenue than they need versus the areas around Blue Mountain or Centerville or even by Parker have access to that tax revenue, because we couldn't care for ourselves on our own townships. It would not work. It can't be each for your own within your little township. It wouldn't work. So that's why we have a school equalization formula for budgeting for school districts.
Some of the old timers would talk about in the planning and zoning commission about the difference between K7 goes right through, basically right through the middle of the county. You got the western half, which doesn't have much over there, and then you've got the eastern half, which has a lot, has plenty. And where the dividing line that really becomes for the county.
I guess I'm curious. So you're saying you don't think doing the township caps would work, or you think, or what?
I don't think it would for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think that most of the solar energies would find it makes good business sense to develop 2,000 acre. I'll use 2,000, a 2,000 acre project at 20 different 100 acre sites versus potentially 3 or 4 larger sites. And so if they happen to be concentrated within one township because of easy access to a grid or a substation, it makes better business sense for them to do it in a location. If that township by township theory was put into place and the areas close to those grids that could economically be developed are done and taken care of, and that's just a few hundred acres, and the rest of the county's sitting out here with this big remaining acreage cap available for development, but it's just not feasible for them to do so financially. We're going to miss out on a whole bunch of potential tax revenue. And I'm here not because I think solar energy is going to save the planet. It's something that can really help.
So
But I think
there's 3 main transmission lines in Linn County.
Sure.
Split it between them. I'm just saying, I think there should be a way to make it more fair for the whole county and not just us.
So I would be curious to know the difference between the transmission lines. And so there's a huge transmission line that is just north of 152, which goes from Lansing all the way out to Parker. There's a huge transmission line there, and there's another one that turns south and goes just west of Centerville. And those are to be developed, and you tack right onto those.
I think anything can. I think the guy sitting back here is going to tell you it's going to cost us more, and we don't want to do that. But do we care if it costs them more to build it up front? Because they're gonna play us. Don't get me wrong.
We do if they take it to another county.
You're right, but don't get me wrong. There's only one company back here. You're gonna be regulating more than one, but they're gonna play these regulations to fit their best ability. Trust me, I do commercial work, and that's what everyone does. So they'll sit back here and say they only want it there because it's only feasible, because they don't want to have to spend $1 million on a transmission line or 10 million, whatever it's going to be. But that liability is not upon us. So I don't think we need to necessarily worry about if it's an added cost to them to be in a different location when we do know there is other viable options.
But Mark, I think you're right. But these energy companies also have the choice to either do business with us or go somewhere else.
well, so there's a difference between encouraging the companies to work in a way that has a lesser impact on the county, but also we want to avoid it being prohibitive, and we need to find that line, which I hope is what we're doing, going over the regulations instead of just saying, oh, you can only have so many acres here, so many acres here. Let's do that with buffer zones and how much they can affect the water, and just kind of encourage the spread, or not spread, but make it not quite as dense.
So if it's about money to the county or power plant shutting down, and the regulations last year, wind just was shut down. There was no discussion about, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do if the power plant goes down? They just shut wind down. So was it because you had the solar, I don't mean this nefarious in your back pocket because, okay, we can push this forward because they don't want wind. I'm just trying to see the thought process because we're relying upon the power plant's going to shut down. We need money from the county, our taxes are going to go up, and solar is our only saving grace. But we shut wind down with no thought to any of that.
That was because
Well,
of the
there's a-
comprehensive plan.
I'll give you the five reasons and we follow. I wasn't part of it, but we follow.
In my mind, when I took the vote on that and I voted against it, but what I saw happening on the Planning and Zoning Commission was too many problems unsolved with wind. The flickering, the noise, you can name them all, because you were involved in that, but there's just too many issues to make it viable in this county, was my opinion.
Yeah, plus it was backed up by the comprehensive plan,
Yeah.
including the survey.
Right.
There's no screening, there's no setback that's gonna eliminate the visibility of those from upwards of 30 miles away as compared to solar energy.
It just depends where you're at. I mean, if you could see solar panels 30 miles away,
Linn County?
yes, you could.
Really?
Satellite, maybe.
Oh, I can see the power plant stacked.
See them no 30 miles away.
Huh?
You ain't gonna see them no 30 miles away. Hell, curvature of the earth will stop that.
Okay.
But you could still farm around the windmills and do other things. I mean, I don't want either one, me
Rich, are
personally.
we gonna go over these things or are we gonna not?
You know, it's 8:00. Yeah, I think we're gonna go to the questions. We're gonna do it tonight. We're gonna pick up fresh the next time. What's the will of the group? Should we head right into them or call tonight and come back next week?
With the way tonight's going, I don't think we're gonna get much done.
I think we've had a very healthy discussion tonight. And again, I believe this from the beginning. This group really works hard. And we're all trying to reach consensus and trying to get our heads and hands wrapped around this thing. And you're commended for that. I really are. But I'm about spent and I'm ready to come back and work on regulations next Wednesday night.
Yeah.
So
Do you think we could come to consensus on what the message that goes to the public is that the commissioners asked for tonight? That way we don't have to discuss that again next time? I think we can probably come to that consensus tonight in a short period of time.
Well, I mean, the way I'd articulate them is, A, we're going to complete our revisions of the code that is governing or controlling solar power. That's one. Two, we're gonna take all the time we need to make sure we do that right.
That's not what I'm talking about, Richard. I'm saying the text message that's going out to every resident in Linn County. What do we want it to say?
What's our communication gonna look like announcing this public forum? Should we graphs and then?
I'm correct, Danny, that that's what you guys are expecting to hear from us, correct?
I'm here to, I can stay on the commission.
Okay.
That's a smart move.
Well, it's, I mean, that's
Right.
what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
So Jeff, read yours again.
Yeah. The Linn County Board of County Commissioners is seeking public input regarding potential revisions to the previously adopted zoning regulations for solar energy conversion systems.
I think we should just say the Linn County Planning and Zoning Board is requesting public input on Linn County's interest in solar.
Commercial.
Or
With a big
feedback.
a big banner that says solar energy, so they'll read it.
Yeah.
And know it.
I don't think we need to tell them we're looking for input on the regulations, we're redoing the regulations, we want input. Because I think at the end of it, what we all want is to come some kind of consensus, whether the majority of Linn County wants solar or they don't. And I'm hoping we can walk away from that meeting
I like that.
feeling that.
Did you add for or against to encourage it? Encourage the participation?
Well, however you would word that, yeah, I think we're looking for feedback, pro or con to solar. I don't know if that's the right way to word it, but
Can you put commercial so they understand it's not just solar panels on their house?
We can
Yeah,
do
I
whatever.
think we should do
I think we should, because I mean, that's not what the question is residential by any means. Because
it.
people get a little spicy about that real quick.
Does everybody agree with Daniels?
I am,
It's
good
good
here,
thought.
it's,
Now that
With
it's
the
not a-
changes of 4 or against?
It's a good
you can't
start.
take a vote, but I see heads no, so I'm gonna say yes.
Daniel, I'm not gonna make you say it again. Can you send it to me?
I don't even know what I said.
You can rewatch it on the video.
I go back on the video and look at
Okay.
it.
But I think in the paper one, it has to be more scientific, right? Or it does not? No legally,
No,
because it's not a hearing.
Forum.
Okay, so we can do the same
Public
thing. in there.
notice is all it is.
Yeah, we're not restricted by all those other rules
Right,
for the other word.
right.
I would like to go on the record as, again, encouraging the county commissioners to collect information about each of the individual speakers, so they'll know which parts of the county were represented or not represented. And I would discourage if the county commissioners are there facilitating that, and from doing any kind of a straw poll, asking people to raise their hands who are for or against it in the crowd, unless you take attendance at the door and you verify that every person there is from Linn County, knowing that there has been a petition circulated where people were told they don't have to reside in the county to sign. So I think that's very important.
That's a lot of information to put on that.
They just
Oh,
have,
I think that's just, I'm assuming you're gonna chair the meeting, Richard. I would assume.
Yeah.
And I think anyone that comes up, please tell us your name and your address. And then you get, they're from Blue Mound or they're from Prescott or Pleasanton,
we
whatever.
have the ground rules for the whole meeting.
Yeah.
And we need to be strict on that, because last time it got a little loose. Sometimes people would just kind of barge through and not say anything. But
It will be incumbent on me to make sure that works right. And I-
Yes, sir.
I'm not gonna challenge.
That he said.
Yeah, I don't think that all needs to be in the message, but. I
No,
think
agreed.
it's addressed
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Ask the attending meeting.
So someone will either have to physically speak or physically write a letter.
To
We
circle,
got 2 minutes and we'll be there until everybody's had their turn.
to circle back to what you said at first, I agree that we need some adjectives or something on solar. Because that was the weakness in the first survey, that it just said solar. And it got misinterpreted.
This is the opportunity
Yeah, so I'll
to
look,
tell the county how you feel.
yeah, commercial solar, or, we've got fancy definitions.
Well, our wording in here is utility, but I don't think people pick up on that. If we use the term commercial, I think the public gets what we're talking about.
I would agree.
Most people
I gotta think
have
if
a
the
mental
Linn County
image.
residents don't know that we're talking about it by now, that they're under a rock. I mean,
Yeah.
Everybody's just talking about it right now.
I kept counting.
And they're probably not gonna show up to the meeting if they don't know that we're talking about it right now
But
anyway.
again, you may not.
I would probably be surprised.
You'd be surprised if we look at the western
But I'm
side of
still,
the county.
I've answered,
Tight.
the people around and I'm getting crickets.
tight
They don't even
case,
know what-
tight case. That's my argument. Tight case. I want a tight case.
That's why I think
Um,
we'll see a lot of people from one part of the county. I hope we hear from a
mean,
bigger area.
What about using the word farm? Solar farm? 'Cause
They
that-
prefer solar arrays.
I would say,
People
What will the public
People
understand?
have a mental
I think
image of
commercial.
a solar farm.
I agree.
I think commercial.
Commercial. I mean, as far as the citizens of Linn County understanding what we're getting together to have a forum about, commercial solar energy.
Farms, yeah.
Facilities.
I like farms. Commercial solar farms.
That's what I got written down, commercial solar farms.
I think that's understood.
That work?
It's
A
understood.
lot better than commercial solar development.
Okay.
Doesn't have a positive or negative connotation to it.
Well, and they know it's more than 10. It's
Well, they get
more-
the concept
it's more
of
than
farm,
somebody's
yeah.
rooftop.
Then just the time and the place, whenever we get that ironed out.
Got all that, Darren?
Did you-
Darren, do you have any sense of whether the school?
thought I saw you do this.
To send that kind of communication?
Say that
Do
again.
you have any sense of whether the school will work with you to send that kind of information out? I mean, it's kind of an oddball request to ask.
So my understanding, that Jayhawk Lynn will do it.
Okay.
And I'm gonna reach out to Prairie View and Pleasanton to see if they'll do it, because I'm sure that they've got the same somewhat type system to send out mass information.
You're not talking about having 3 separate ones?
No, just each school district sending it out.
Oh, gotcha.
Same message.
The reason I just wanted someone to be prepared in case they were told that, what else could be done to get it out? Because clearly the newspaper's not gonna reach everybody.
I don't think,
Right,
I don't think we should rely just on that. I think we need to,
I also think in that,
yeah, sorry, David.
well, I think in this message, it needs to say, if you cannot attend, send an email to me or whoever. I'll collect the emails and I can hand them to Rich the night of the meeting and they can each be read or whatever. But I think in the email, you've got to put an address, where your property is.
You have to put the requirements in there if they do.
Correct.
I think if you're gonna require those things, you're gonna have to put them in there to begin with then. So if you're gonna put that in the paper you can send an email, you're gonna have to put in there of the requirement. So if it's name,
I
address,
agree. Yeah.
it's gonna have to be clear and convincing, because I don't wanna have 500 emails that we're sitting here and none of them are considered because they don't have the house number or something crazy. Like, I think the citizens need to
So
know.
do they have to provide their driver's license to verify it, like voting?
I've never done one of these. I don't know how it's done.
I don't think we've ever done any of this in the past for a requirement for a public forum, so I think we're tiptoeing into new territory, and I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but we're creating new stipulations that's never been done in the past.
I know I've provided written and oral testimony in Topeka. I've never been asked for a driver's license.
Neither have I.
So I think that's gonna discourage. We don't
Some
want,
people don't have drivers.
the reason we're asking for writing is because we want to encourage it.
But he's saying if they want to speak, they have to prove that they live in the county.
Have to, they just say where they're from. They don't have,
Okay.
no one's gonna verify that.
Okay,
We're not gonna be checking a tax bill.
I
think-
appreciate
I
that.
think the point is, we're just trying to understand what parts of the county represent. And I think that's valuable
That's
information.
why I initially asked for that.
Yeah.
That's also why I pushed for a survey, because I think that gives us the best opportunity to get a cross section of data. Of like, once I shared with the group earlier, anytime you can opt in, you do not get accurate, actionable information.
At this forum, are we going to allow, like, violence, like, on coming back in, are we gonna allow clear way to speak? Because I don't want you guys to say, you know what, you have to live in the county or you can't speak, and then we get there, and then the solar companies come up and you guys allow them to come up and speak. It's either we're gonna allow everybody to speak or just Linn County.
I think,
And then you're gonna have to verify if they live here, but, cause I've had people reach out to me that own property here, but they don't, you know, they live in Johnson County, so. I know whenever David was coming here, for Linn, there were a ton of people that came here, I thought, in Anderson County that spoke against the Linn. You brought professionals in on that, so is this a forum where you're gonna have just citizens that live here and vote here? And then, are you gonna allow, it's a public forum, so I'm just trying to understand.
Elliot, my opinion on that is you're looking for as much information as you can get.
I don't think they're trying to
You can't.
keep anybody from speaking.
No, you can't allow a biologist to get up and speak for 20 minutes.
No.
But you gotta get as much information as you can. So my opinion on that, and it's just what it is you allow anybody to talk who wants to speak. As long as they identify who they are, where they're from.
make it clear that whether they live here or not.
Right. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Again, the reason I asked the question is not to suppress anybody from speaking. Let's hear from them all, but it lets you know where they're coming from. I think that matters.
Let's do this. This week, if you've got further questions about anything about how this forum may take place, send it to Darren. He'll collect them. We can talk about it next week.
Yeah, our ideas on how to, what to put in the notice, if we've forgotten anything yet.
I mean, we're ahead of this, right? I mean, it's not happening this next week or the following week, so we've got some time to work on this.
Should we add something in the notice? Because we can't add all the stuff in the notice, right? I think you keep the notice simple.
Right.
Sweet.
Right.
Put something.
To Danny's point.
Contact the county website for more information.
Sure, yep.
And then there is where we have a comprehensive rules of engagement for the actual form. If we so feel that it needs rules of engagement, so then we can put it wrong.
I like it.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You said residents
Thank you for talking to me.
Oh, yeah.
on hold.
That's the way I put that.
Okay, you have to be a resident of the county to vote.
Correct.
I own property here, say I own property here, but I live someplace else and I pay a lot of taxes here on property, I cannot vote.
Correct.
That's bad.
That's,
Well, that's not up to us.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're
I'm paying taxes. I'm
considered
paying taxes in this county.
right or
Well,
wrong.
that's my point. I'm saying,
yeah, I think, yeah,
What I'm
that's,
saying is.
yeah, I think
we don't
that's,
own property.
excuse me, I think that's the reason we're having this public forum. Anybody can come talk. And if you're a landowner and you live in Anderson County, you own 1,000 acres here, you say so at the podium. And we take that into account. And it's not a vote. And the idea of the forum is to get a better picture, and then the commissioner will decide where to take it from there. So I think it's a very good point. You can't vote if you don't live here.
Well, legally, you can't. I mean, if it comes to an election, just because you own land here, you don't get to vote in Linn County if you don't live here.
Right.
I think it's important to hear their.
That's not fair to say because a lot of the lands that are gonna be leased out for these projects, they don't live here. They just own the land here. So,
I'm just speaking legally.
Yeah.
All I'm saying,
Yeah.
you legally cannot vote in Linn County if you don't reside here. Regardless of whether that's right or wrong, that's not my opinion. It's just a fact.
So I guess one question is, do we want to ask the commissioners about this? Because it's always been about citizen input. So do we want to keep it at citizen input, public input?
Linn County.
Public
Because it's
input.
two different things.
I think the guy that owns 2,000 acres in the county and doesn't live here, we need to hear from that person.
I agree.
I agree.
If you got a biologist that can make a point or work on it, we need to hear from them.
And where you live and where you vote's a real dicey thing. I'll use myself as an opinion. I worked up at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln for 4 years. My official domicile was 197 West Sugar Lake Drive, right outside of town. And I voted here and I did all my business here, but for the most of the time, I lived in Nebraska. But that was not my domicile. My domicile was in this county. So that whole thing can get real dicey and you just, I think we're doing the right thing by saying, tell us who you are and what your interest is here, and we'll listen to it and evaluate based on that kind of information. Man.
I completely derailed your plan tonight, Richard, so I
I think this was valuable, and I think we've made a lot of progress, but I'm ready to give it a rest and come back next week. Do I hear you amen to that?
I second, I got one thing. So, Monday, I've got to give a report to the commissioners, and we are moving forward with the regulations. Going through the regulations.
Do you want to put me on the agenda?
No, because I can go in, I've got a spot open that I can go in. And all I gotta do is just give them an update and let them know that the consensus is to move forward to go through the regulations. And that's what it is.
Fair enough.
And we're working on verbiage on the form.
Right.
Just so everybody knows, I won't be here next week, so we'll touch on this the following.
How is your replacement? Sure.
Yeah, she'll be here, but as far as what I brought and presented tonight, it won't be presented next week.
All right.
I'd rather be here to present.
Yeah. Any other business to come for us tonight? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
Actually, not.
Welcome.